nerds, what's up? Today we'll be tackling artificial intelligence or AI. Most recently with the influx of websites like ChatGPT and Womb AI, artificial intelligence has made a glaring comeback into the public consciousness in a very new way. Now, to get this out of the way first off, we will obviously be focusing on AI through a fantasy and sci-fi lens on this channel, most specifically how this could potentially affect our genre, through how it will affect authors and artists and fandom communities. We aren't talking about AI in a general sense, because that's something we interact with daily on a regular basis. If you've ever used a calculator, played an online chess game, used Google Translate, or asked Alexa a question, you have interacted with artificial intelligence. No, we aren't talking about computational power today. Rather, we are talking more about the existential questions around art. And can art be duplicated by something that is not human? Should a computer be able to write novels? Paint art? What is that doing to the current fantasy landscape? Will it destroy our genre? Or will it revive it? There are many complexities to this argument, and we're going to try to explore them all today. Now, immediately when I thought of this topic, there were some pop culture, like movies, TV shows, books that immediately came to mind. Now, I'm about to show probably the decade in which I was born with these examples, but I immediately thought of properties like iRobot, AI, artificial intelligence, Star Trek, The Next Generation in particular, The Matrix, The Terminator, WALL-E, and only the real kids will know these ones, the two Disney Channel original movies, Smart House and Pixel Perfect. I also thought of things that I have experienced more recently and not in childhood, which were two Ted Chiang short stories from Exhalation, The Life Cycle of Software Objects, and Daisy's Patent Automatic Nanny. You'll notice a through line in the movies and stories I've mentioned. They mostly portray fear and distrust. Of course, we have a few more romantic examples of AI. I think of WALL-E and Data, specifically from Star Trek Next Gen, in which they are represented as heroes without much fear or distrust. And even in Becky Chambers' A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, in which the AI is very humanized. But otherwise, these medias either show the AI as outright hostile to humans or at the very least in need of consideration. These movies ask questions about the ability for AI to feel human emotions, whether they can actually create or only replicate, and if they can actually be comparable to humans on any level. Additionally, they might touch on humans' responsibility in dealing with AI. Now, admittedly, most of these examples are 90s examples, but I feel like they actually cover a lot of the themes that are at the forefront of a lot of the discussions I've been seeing circling these new AI tools. So today let's talk about how AI is perhaps changing or influencing fantasy fandoms, particularly when it comes to our authors and artists, and even the fandom spaces. We'll look at the pros, we'll look at the cons, as we always do. Now, before we go in, I think I should state my bias up front, which is that I am naturally distrustful and suspicious of these sorts of applications of AI. I am the kind of person who feels very committed to humans making creative things. And it's not that I'm scared of technology. I grew up in a very tech-forward family. I love technology, but somehow when we move from computational power to creativity, I get a little bit more wary. So that is my bias, and you'll see that throughout this video, but we're still gonna try to talk about it as unemotionally as we can, as we usually do. With that in mind, see you after the jump. It wouldn't be one of my videos if we didn't start with the smallest bit of history. I promise we'll be brief. The reason it is so interesting to talk about AI through a sci-fi and fantasy lens is that our genres have actually been talking about artificial intelligence before artificial intelligence really even became a thing in broader society. The first artificial intelligence stories can be linked back to the Greek myths with Talos. Now, the stories often differ, but most versions have him as a bronze man tasked with guarding Crete. In terms of other famous works, we take a long leap forward to the 19th century, with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein published in 1818. Next, we think of Samuel Butler, who talked about AI in his famous essay entitled Darwin Among the Machines in 1863. Contrast to the fact that artificial intelligence, as we think of it today as an academic discipline, wasn't considered founded until 1956 at a conference at Dartmouth College. Our sci-fi and fantasy writers have been dealing with the ideas long before they ever came into reality. From there, AI has taken on many different forms. Alan Turing is often considered to be the father of AI, defining artificial intelligence with his theory of computation. I'm not going to go into the long history of AI itself, but I do love pointing out something called the AI effect, in which the general public discounts behavior as being artificially intelligent because they've grown used to it, and thus it loses its intelligence. What the AI effect essentially does is continually defines AI as something that hasn't been done yet, because the minute it's been done, then it doesn't seem intelligent anymore. Rodney Brooks, an Australian robotist, says, "Every time we figure out a piece of it, it stops being magical. We say, oh, that's just computation." I think that's an important element here, as we need to recognize how much artificial intelligence already plays a significant role in our lives when we're trying to deal with maybe the panic we feel. And that panic, of course, has come in some form in every decade since the dawn of time. I have talked in previous videos before about how afraid people were of the invention of books, of cars, of phones, things that we think of very commonplace. Whether some of these responses, whether large or small, were meant in humor or meant seriously, there has always been concern and scare over machines taking jobs from humans, over machines taking creativity, over machines destroying the world or making it different in a negative way that we don't want. So why does it feel different now all of a sudden when we're talking about art, or specifically here, our fantasy and sci-fi communities or fantasy and sci-fi books? First, let's define what's going on. Just in case you're a little out of the loop, I will state clearly what's actually happening. This is coming to the forefront right now because people are actually writing books, short stories, and creating art or cover art for books, all using artificial intelligence online. They can now have AI narrate an audiobook without any person involved. In fact, in a hugely viral tweet that happened pretty recently, James Yu introduced something called Story Engine, an AI tool to write novels. This video is wild, and I highly recommend you watch it. But to sum up, they've created an AI tool that they claim helps authors write full books in a matter of 2 to 3 days. It requires editing, so they claim it's just a help. And this has actually already started creating physical, clear issues. Clarkesworld, a famous sci-fi magazine, actually had to shut down submissions because they had such an influx of AI submissions that they could tell were artificially written, what they think to get a quick buck, since they offer money if you make it into their magazine. Many Reddit communities, including our beloved Art Fantasy, have also banned AI because it was generating so many stupid, irrelevant comments, and Amazon has reportedly been flooded with AI books for sale by authors that don't exist. Like anything, of course, ChatGPT and AI can be used in a helpful and useful way. But as these tools start invading creative spaces, it's given a lot of people pause. What's interesting about the field of artificial intelligence is it deals with a lot of different aspects of what intelligence means. And it seems like when I break down these concerns or conversations, very few people are actually concerned with the computational power part of intelligence. It seems that more people are concerned with what we would call emotional intelligence or social intelligence. A computer being smarter than us at chess or math or something sterile, shall we say, feels normal. We are used to computers doing things we cannot in our everyday lives. It's when an AI approaches human emotion that we start pausing. And I think the problem with that is we would have to start defining what makes a human human, what defines humanity. And I'm just gonna say it, I think that's a little out of the scope of this YouTube video. I'm not a philosopher, but I do have to put it out there that I think that is an element for someone else to discuss. But there has been a lot of concerns brought up. How is this going to hurt authors and artists? If AI content keeps improving, and it most likely will, as with any new technology, will it become harder and harder to tell what is human-made versus what is AI-generated? What are the ethics of how these machines learn? Is it considered stealing content from authors and artists when they comb the internet to produce what they're producing? How much editing does one have to do of an AI-generated content, either art or writing, to be considered the creator of it and not just an editor? And does that matter? And is there a world where we believe that AI-generated art and writing will be just as good as or better than human-generated artwork? The first thing we need to talk about and consider is that currently AI content is derivative. AI art and books are generated by combing through thousands and thousands and thousands of things that already exist. Now, some artists have claimed that this is stealing their work, while other people say, well, real artists learn from other artists all the time. They use influences. I think that real artists do learn from other people, but it's usually not as equal, right? You can't actually take the content. You can look and try, but you're actually not using it to replicate. You also are generally giving credit to those other artists, which these AI generators don't. This derivativeness is also very interesting when we think of written works of fantasy and sci-fi, because it makes me wonder if it's all just an amalgamation of everything that's out there. Are we just going to see AI writing constantly giving us the same tropes or the same things that have happened frequently and not giving any new twists on it? Because in that nature, it feels like it could never be really grand work. Now, currently, as it stands, all of the AI generated writing I've seen is really bad. Like if you go back to that tweet I showed you and read what I think the owner of that video, James, thinks is good writing, I was like, this is really bad. Now, someone could go edit that and maybe it would sound better, but that doesn't mean that the AI generated content won't get better. And so the question is, could AI ever be creative? Could it ever create something wholly new that had not been done before if by nature the way AI works is derivative? Now, it's not that derivative stories don't sell. In fact, I think derivative stories have a huge place in the marketplace. But could they ever be considered really noteworthy? When you think of the noteworthy authors and works, it's usually because they do something new. Look, I've said several times on this channel how much I revere Terry Pratchett as a genius. And one thing I've often said about his works is just how they feel like they could have been written yesterday, even if they were written decades ago, because he had so much vision. He understood so much, and he could just predict so much and get to the heart of things. And could an AI ever have that vision? Could an AI ever predict and be that intuitive on human nature that when they wrote their novels, they would just always be relevant? I have a really hard time seeing it. And when you think about the history of sci-fi and how sci-fi has talked about artificial intelligence before artificial intelligence was even real, because sci-fi looks to the future to tell us things. Could an AI ever do that? Now, another consideration I want to make is that I do think sometimes we maybe devalue the human behind the work when we straight up say that AI could take over because it'll get better and better. I'm going to use art first in this particular example. My husband and I love collecting art from people we know. It means a lot to us to have their works displayed in our house. Those pieces mean something to us, and even though they're good works on their own, they mean more to us because we know who created them. I also brought another example right here, which is a recent art piece I actually just bought. Now, my friend posted a reel, and it was the process of this artist, and I was so blown away that I immediately went and bought a piece. Now, I love how this looks. I think it's very beautiful, but if I had just seen this as a print, like just online, like a digital print, I don't think I would have bought it. I bought this piece of art because I was so connected to the process of the artist, and that's why I connected to it. It was a human connection. And we can forward that to our favorite works. Now, obviously not all of them, but a lot of these fandoms that we have thrive on the connection to the author. I think the best example currently of this is obviously Brandon Sanderson. The way he answers questions and involves his fan base is huge and is a part of what keeps cosmic speculation fun and alive. And not only that, but authors have a particular voice. There are a lot of authors that when you read their works, you immediately know it's them. And could AI develop different voices? Is that possible? And additionally, if it's just AI, are people going to feel as connected to the work if there's not a person to connect with behind it? Now, one thing I could see happening is authors starting to use AI generated writing and then edit it and are the face behind that writing. I don't really know where to put that in. How do you guys feel about that? How much editing do they have to do to be considered the author of the work? And would you feel the same about that kind of work as you do as someone sitting down and writing alone? Let me know in the comments. Let's switch gears a little bit. So a huge hurdle in the self-publishing community is cover art. Art is very, very expensive, and unfortunately for self-published works, most people are cover readers. Like, your cover matters even more as a self-published piece of work because you don't have a big publishing house behind you forwarding your book or putting it in bookstores or giving you an advertising budget, because art often legitimizes your work whether it deserves it or not. So AI art could be an extremely positive force in the self-publishing community. It would be a ton cheaper to make your book stand out and look way more professional and kind of get you over that hurdle without very much money. But the issue I have there is that kind of work is probably the work that really are keeping a lot of artists in business. My guess is not many artists are making a ton of money at galleries selling original pieces for tens of thousands of dollars. My guess is artists rely on smaller pieces like that. So in that way, AI could literally be taking money from their hands. Another thing about AI is, again, similar to what I said before, will an AI have a distinctive feel of art? Will people feel super connected to it? You know, we do have artists today that people feel so strongly about in the fantasy community. I obviously think of Michael Whelan, who people can automatically recognize his work and sometimes will buy a book specifically because he painted it. You know, people can also recognize a Richard Anderson cover, and I think in the self-published community, we can recognize a Felix Ortiz cover. People are connected to the artists. But self-published authors are probably going to be hurt more by artificial intelligence as it's being used right now than helped anyway, even if we think of the art consideration. Because all of these AI-generated books that are really bad, that are flooding Amazon, are only going to serve to weaken the self-published reputation that's already pretty bad. I'm a part of SPFBO, which is working really hard to improve people's perceptions of self-published and how good it can be. And if there's a lot more low-effort content out there, it's going to be even harder than before to shift through it. Additionally, AI-generated works are going to disproportionately affect the digital or online community than the physical book sales. I really doubt people are getting these books printed and published. Rather, they're going for easy money by putting them digitally online. Further, probably hurting the self-published community, which works way more in digital than physical. So look, there's gonna be a lot of benefits. It's gonna make things easier, it can make things cheaper, it's fun. But I also have this consideration of worrying about artificial intelligence taking over things humans really wanna do. It's a little different when computers are taking over very undesirable jobs, difficult jobs, dangerous jobs, than when it's taking over like the really fun dream jobs. So I realized I was supposed to be saying some positives, and basically this video is really negative. I apologize. I'm sort of negative about it. I apologize. I don't really want my fantasy communities overrun with AI-generated works. Even the artists, I'm connected to artists. I want a human behind it, and I'm just gonna say it. But realistically, I actually don't think this AI problem is gonna be that much of a problem. Look, I know I'm an eternal optimist, but hear me out. We freaked out not that long ago about digital books. People thought it was the end of physical books. What ended up actually happening is digital books took over a portion of all sales, but ended up leveling out at a specific share of the total portion and really hasn't budged much since. I'd be really surprised if AI doesn't do the same thing. Yes, AI will probably take money from artists, probably take money from creatives, but I think it will probably take a portion of the market and then stop. Additionally, I find with technologies about this, we usually have a really big scare, and usually they kind of peter out and it's not so much of a thing anymore. I think ChatGPT and AI in that way, I think we'll start incorporating it into processes. I would not be surprised. I don't think it's going away fully. I think it will probably be used as a research tool and maybe even a tool to help authors. But I do not think it's going to all of a sudden be, well, no one writes books anymore, no one makes art anymore. Right now it's a trend, so of course it's gonna dominate our discussions. But eventually we will incorporate it as we've incorporated every technology before, and it will kind of level out. For me personally though, I will be seeking human-generated content. Please let me know what you think of this topic in the comments below. Your brush with AI in the fantasy communities, how you're feeling about it, positive or negative. Just give me all your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, if you like these kind of deep dives, please like and subscribe. That is the best way to support me. And if you want to see what I'm currently reading or see other nerdy rants, you can check me out on Instagram at bookborn.reviews. I'll see you next time. Bye.